As always, the NFL playoffs begin with Wild Card Weekend. We have 4 good matchups this week. Hopefully we get some good matchups this week. Hopefully we get a lot of good football games, because we only have 11 more games in the NFL season. So that's just something to take in, as this season has felt like it has gone by pretty quickly. So without further ado, let's get to my wild card predictions. I do want to mention, though, if you want to watch my playoffs assessment video, where I made my power rankings from 1 to 12 on teams that I think will likely make the Super Bowl, I ranked them from 1 to 12, with number 1 being the most likely, in my opinion, to number 12 being the least likely, in my opinion. So I'll put the link of that in the description down below if you want to look at that video. It's kind of interesting. Anyway, without further ado, let's get to the first prediction. The first one is the Indianapolis Colts versus the Houston Texans. And this is going to be a good one, I think. I got the Texans in this one, though. I just think the Texans, they seem to play very well in a wild card game, but they just struggle to get over that next step, to get that next step out of the way, and that's winning in the divisional round. I see this being a pretty competitive matchup. The Colts' offensive line has gotten better this season than it has been in years past. Andrew Luck has time to throw the football. The Texans, Deshaun Watson is getting his first taste of the NFL playoffs, so this will be an interesting one. Although you could say that the Colts, they have some players with some playoff experience, but it's been a while since the Colts have been in the playoffs, and I like the Texans because I just think the Texans having the home field, and the Texans, they're one of the hottest teams in the league. Although these two teams, they started out very slow to the season. The Texans 0-3, and the Colts 1-5. I do think we're in for a close one in this one, but I think towards the end, I think the Texans, I think they'll start to pull away towards the fourth quarter. Although I think the Colts running game may be able to keep them in it, but I just can't trust that Colts defense still. It's gotten better, but I just still can't trust the Colts defensively. So I like the Texans to win by a score of 34-24. I think the Colts will keep it pretty close about the fourth quarter than the Texans. I think the Texans maybe score a late touchdown with about 2.5 minutes left to seal the game. I like Houston to move on. Next, we have the Seattle Seahawks and the Dallas Cowboys. Now, these two teams played each other, and I think it was week 3, and the Seahawks, they came out on top. But that was in Seattle, and this is a much different Cowboys team now than it was back in week 3. Although the Seahawks have won 3 in a row against the Cowboys. And the Cowboys, they have gotten better. They traded for Amari Cooper before the trade deadline. And Amari Cooper has been a huge factor in the Cowboys' run so far. Because the Cowboys, they seemed dead out of the water after the Monday night letdown against the Titans. But ever since that, the Cowboys, they seem to pull out big wins. Even though they got shut out by the Colts, I think the Cowboys team is a lot better now than it was in week 3. However, I feel like the Seahawks, they've also gotten somewhat better. I know the Seahawks, they had a bad loss against the 49ers a few weeks ago. But the Seahawks, I think defensively, the Seahawks are going to match up very well with the Cowboys. If they can eliminate that running game of Ezekiel Elliott, I think it's going to be a long evening for the Cowboys. I feel like if Amari Cooper gets contained and Ezekiel Elliott gets contained, I think it'll be a struggle for the Cowboys to pull this off. But I think this game is going to come down to the wire, sometimes like it usually does. I think the Seahawks, they win by a close one. I think the Seahawks win. I'm going to say it's low scoring. I'm going to say 20-15. I think it's going to be kind of a maybe not so normal score out of it. I think the Seahawks win by 5. I'm going to say 20-15. Or even 20-16. Anyway, next we've got the Los Angeles Chargers and the Baltimore Ravens. And these two teams, they played each other a few weeks ago. The Ravens, their season looked out of the water back in week 9 or week 10. But ever since they made the move to start Lamar Jackson at quarterback, the Ravens have nearly been unstoppable. Their only loss since Lamar Jackson took over at the quarterback position was to the Chiefs. And that was a game where the Ravens could have won, but they beat themselves towards the end. And the Chargers and the Ravens, I think this is going to be a good defensive battle. I think the defenses are going to rise up to the occasion. Although this seems like a game, and it seems like whichever better offense can win this game, which the Chargers, they have the better offense in my opinion. The Ravens got the better defense, so something's going to have to give. If the Chargers defense can get some stops, if they can force the Ravens defense to play the shorter field, I like the Chargers' chances. But in the end, though, I think the Ravens pull it out. I think this is going to be the type of game that comes down to a game-winning field goal. I think Justin Tucker nails a 43-yard field goal at the horn. Now I think the Ravens pick up a 24-21 victory. And the final matchup of the wild card weekend, the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Chicago Bears. The Eagles are the defending Super Bowl champions. They are back in the playoffs. They are embracing the underdog role once again. But the Bears, they've got the best and they got the nastiest defense in the National Football League. They've got the best defense statistically and visually. The trade for Khalil Mack at the beginning of the season, it is proven to pay dividends, and it's worth those draft picks that Chicago gave up to get Khalil Mack. And the question is, can the Eagles' offense, can they score points on the league's best defense, especially on the road? The one thing that the Eagles don't have that they had last year was home field advantage throughout the playoffs. They don't have that. If they want to make another run, they've got to win in some hostile environments like Chicago, and then if they end up winning this and pulling off the upset, New Orleans, and then potentially the Rams or maybe Dallas or Seattle. But either way, if they want to win the Super Bowl again, they got a huge mountain to climb and winning in hostile environments. And this is one of the most hostile environments in the National Football League, is Soldier Field. But the most hostile environment in the NFC is in New Orleans. And the Eagles, they've got to focus one at a time, but they got to face a hostile environment every single time if they want to get back to the Super Bowl in Atlanta in February. And the Bears, they've got the defense to win the Super Bowl. I think the Bears, they have potential to make a run to Atlanta, but the question is, can they pull it off? They have the defense to do it, but do they have the offense to it? I think for the Bears, if they want to win this game, I feel like for the offense, I think 20 points will be good enough to pull off the win against Philadelphia. Maybe 20 will give you a good shot. I'd say about 24 is where you want to be. 24 would put the Bears in great shape. And if the defense can even get a pick six or a scoop and score, if the defense can force some turnovers, giving that offense a short field. The Eagles are not as strong as a team as they were last year, even though there's a lot of big players on there this season. But the running game is not as big of a presence, and it's not as big of a problem for defenses as it was last year. Because last year you had a 1-2 punch in LeGarrette Blount and Jay Ajayi. Now Jay Ajayi is on the injury reserve, and LeGarrette Blount is no longer on the team, and you have Corey Clement out for the season. So the running game is not as big of a presence as it was last year. And I think if the Bears, if they can get to Nick Foles early, I think it'll be a long afternoon or even evening for the defending Super Bowl champions. And I like the Bears. I think the Bears, they win by a score of 27-13. I think the Bears win by at least 2 touchdowns against the defending Super Bowl champions. I think that Chicago running game has started to pick up as the later the season's gone down the line. So those are my wildcard predictions. For a review, I like the Texans over the Colts. I like the Seahawks over the Cowboys. I like the Ravens over the Chargers. And I like the Bears over the Eagles. So comment your picks down below. Also like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you next time.